a changing point in my life, was meeting my tribe, meeting people who looked like me, who had experiences like me, and who were able to share, some really honest lived experience of disability. Yes, so my name is Samantha Renke. I'm a broadcaster and disability rights activist and campaigner and consultant, I suppose, but I also dabble a little bit in acting, and I've just brought out my debut memoir, You Are the Best Thing Since Sliced Bread. So I refer to myself as the Del Boy of the disability community, a true northerner, just kind of saying yes to opportunities and then thinking, oh my goodness, what have I just said yes to? And then somehow always managing to pull through. So yeah, many people will recognise me from the Maltesers advert, but I always love to come and enjoy, being part of the community, and I think that's what Naidex really is. I often use the term disability community, and I appreciate not everyone who is neurodivergent, deaf or disabled will necessarily identify with that term, but I think for me, a changing point in my life was meeting my tribe, meeting people who looked like me, who had experiences like me, and who were able to share, some really honest lived experience of disability. So I'm here today. I've just done a wonderful talk. It was called Unburden Yourself, Path to Success. And I guess I talked ultimately, I love storytelling, and I love, really challenging taboo topics around disability. I'm not one, not scared of really kind of getting to the nitty gritty. But ultimately my message for today is, unburden yourself from everything that people have told you. Unburden yourself from that label. We're often, given a diagnosis, either at birth or, if we acquire a disability. And that's one part of being disabled. But actually, society gives us a whole host of labels that are based in falsehood, are based in stereotypes, and it can be incredibly difficult to negate and get yourself out of that thought process that ultimately, turns into internalized ableism and can really echo and kind of sing in your head that you're not worthy of, or you are not deserving of, or you don't have a voice. And that can come from, society as a whole. That can come from, school systems, institutionalized, ableism, and it can come from your friends and family, because no one is exempt of unconscious bias. And I think, we don't really talk about it. So, again, having those conversations, hard conversations with your boss, with your, with your friends, with your partner, with your loved ones. How do you engage? How do you allow your voice to be heard without, having microaggressions, without being given unsolicited advice or being dismissed or being silenced again? And I want to, I want people to embrace that side and find the courage. But I also want, family and friends of disabled or neurodivergent individuals to take the onus away and recognise that, it is up to all of us to come together and have these meaningful conversations, so that disabled people can feel empowered, so they can, feel like they have autonomy over their life. And I guess what we're doing here today is about independence and autonomy, no matter what that looks like for the individual, because independence is such an abstract concept. Independence for me can look very different to you, but I do want people to nurture that. So that's my main message, and I hope by me just being here and, if I encourage someone to, speak up and negate all those harmful messages that we are thrown at, and I feel blessed to be able to do that and drink a lot of tea.
But what happens when ableism filters through from institutions, filters through from our society, and filters down to your own family? And this is something that we rarely talk about.
I think language can be really divisive, but it's also conversations that we need to be having. I find as a consultant, the hardest conversations, or the most questions that I get from non-disabled peers are, well, I don't know what language to use. And what happens is this this scared and this apprehension manifests in further marginalisation. So my biggest tip for anyone who's perhaps non-disabled is, if in doubt, ask. And then, don't expect that all disabled people to think and feel the same. So I choose identity first language because I believe in the social model of disability. But not all disabled or neurodivergent people will, kind of agree on that. I'm very much a social model, advocate, because a lot of my story and a lot of how I came to accept who I was came from understanding that I'm not the problem, that it is actually society that disables me. And so and it's challenging because for a lot of people it's a lot to get your head around, because disability has been so tarnished by the non-disabled world. And I really like the idea of reappropriating something that has been pulled through the hedge and being given a negative slant. I'm all about just, if in doubt, ask, and that's about everything. And I think actually there's no place for ignorance anymore. Yeah, exactly. And I often say in my training, leave your ego at the door. And what I mean is, if someone says to you, actually I find that upsetting, or I find that offensive, or actually can you use this language instead of that language, the problem comes is when the person who's been using the language lets their ego get in the way, and it shuts down that individual because they're embarrassed that they might have got it wrong, embarrassed of their own ignorance. So I say to people, just leave your ego at the door. There's no place for it, and just be honest and be like, do you know what? I didn't realise that was upsetting for you, and I'm eager to learn. Totally. It's never too late to unlearn and relearn. Absolutely.